All right, folks, this is Jack Antonio of Do You Know Jack? And on the line with me, I have the man, the myth, and/or the legend, Wishbone Ash's guitar shredder, Andy Powell. Long-time guitar shredder, 50 years going on, as a matter of fact. How are you doing?
I'm good, Jack. Yeah, nice to be with you. Yeah, it's been a life. It's a life in rock.
Yeah, well, I definitely want to talk about that later, but I mean, one of the things you got going in front of you in the very near future, of course, there's a few European dates, but the thing that I want to talk to you about is you are hitting up the good old US of A in April, and you're hitting some places maybe that you haven't, played in a while.
Yeah, well, you can't. It's hard for a band like us to do the US in one hit, so we'll typically, like, in one period, we'll do the Midwest and the East, and then like on this tour, we're going to go south, and we're going to go through Virginia, and we're going to go into, the southern states, New Orleans, and across to the West Coast. And, we're going to do a southern swing. And then in the fall, actually, we're coming up to Canada.
Nice.
Yeah, mostly BC, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. I mean, one thing I was going to mention to you now, just as I've been reading through various press releases and whatnot, is Mark Abrahams is a relatively new member of the band, correct?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
I guess just for the sake of people that haven't had the opportunity to see Wishbone Ash, just basically because you haven't maybe gotten to some of these places in a while. I mean, what in particular does Mark bring to the table, and how is it working with him, and so on and so forth?
Well, it's interesting. There've been a number of people in this band. It's a long-standing band, as you can imagine. But,
yes.
I had a couple of great guitar players at various points in the band from Finland, and I don't know how that thing happened, but there are some incredible guitar players up there. And the last guy, Marty Mannon, he was with me for 12 years and decided to make some changes in his life. And then we'd always known Mark. Both of us have known Mark, and he's a guy from Yorkshire. He owned a music store up there. But the interesting thing about him was his father was a fan, and he had been turned on to our music at age 9, if you can imagine. So he was learning our music all this time. He's like 38 years of age, but I had a little career in the north of England, playing in local bands, and then also running a music store. Would always help us out on tour when we needed supplies and spares. And I knew he was a good guitar player, but I didn't know he was that good. And the thing that intrigued me, of course, is the guitar style that we have. It's very specific.
Of course, yeah.
Just chatting with him, and I checked out some videos. He sent me some videos, and I was like, whoa, okay, and he's so tuned in. The first show we did was this big rock festival up in Sweden Rock, massive festival, like 6 stages, 50,000 people.
Yeah,
and he just passed with flying colors. He handled that. He's just a natural guy on stage. He brings that youthful thing to the whole energy. And most importantly, he's just so attuned to the twin lead thing, which is our style, and it's just been awesome. Been doing tours, and he loves being on the road. He's like, half the gig when you join a band like this, it's not can you play the music. It's like, can I hang and can I tour? And touring's like a big deal because it's not everyone's cup of tea to live this kind of traveling life, but he loved it.
I was going to mention now, you guys do a pretty hefty amount of dates with the band.
Yes, we do. We, perhaps a little less than we used to do maybe 5-10 years ago. But we take our medicine out in the touring thing in the spring and the fall, and then the summer is usually the odd summer festival here and there. It can be anywhere on the planet. We go all over, but those are just like fly in, fly out type things. Like I mentioned, Sweden Rock, or it might be a festival in the US, or it might be something in Europe. We have a bunch of those in the summer, and then that's the cycle. And every once in a while we get somewhere exotic, like we'll go to Japan, or we might go to Brazil or something like that. A couple of years ago, we went to South Africa, and it's a fun life, and it's always interesting. We got our essential circuits that we do that we know and we love, like the UK and Germany, and those are the old trusty ones that, you know, they usually fall
Sure.
around the same time. Maybe. But we're very lucky, you know, that we've got this fan community that we've nurtured. And they support us, and they kind of know, like when we go to Germany, they go, oh, if it's January, it's Germany, you know. It's like they just know that we're coming through, and they support us. It's wonderful, actually. I'm very fortunate in that regard.
Given the fact that you've been doing these, the touring thing for as long as you have, I mean, has your preparation never, you know, has it evolved? Have you stayed relatively consistent for how you get ready for tours?
What, you mean mentally and physically? Yeah. Well, what I do is, if I got downtime, it's very hard to do the rock thing on a local level when you're off the road. But you need to keep your chops up. And the way I prefer it, I'm not a guy that sits in his living room just practicing guitar, but I like to just get out in front of folks and just throw stuff against the wall and see if it hits and if I can play, and just remind myself that I'm a guitar player. Like, I mean, I've been off the road for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I'll be going back out on the road in a couple of weeks' time. I'm going to do Poland and a tour of France. But, you know, that's the kind of thing I do. And then there's some great local players that I'll just get together with, and we'll like woodshed together, and that's enough for me. But singing's another thing. I'm lucky. I'm one of these guys that I can go a month without singing, and I get back on the road, and you know, might have a couple of days of hoarseness, but my voice comes right back. I know some folks, they really get in there and they go with a singing teacher, and they'll get the pipes working again. I'm fairly fortunate in that regard, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just thinking too now as you were talking about, you know, getting out and just, you know, keeping the chops going even in your you know, quote unquote downtime. I mean, like in terms of the Wishbone Ash set list, like how you know, does that change and evolve?
Oh, it does. Yeah, it does change. And you know, we might have a new album out. We haven't put a new album out for a couple of years now, but we're all the time we're putting out compilations. We have this massive box set that's coming out soon. So we have this catalog that goes on forever. So you can always dive in there and find something that you haven't played live before, and we'll bring, you know, something out from the vaults that interests us. And it's interesting, you know, a song might not have worked 5 years ago or 2 years ago, but it might work now. And you pull that song out and, you know, give it a fresh approach. And we're always changing and upgrading the set list, so that we want to keep it interesting for ourselves, and we want to keep it interesting for the audience. And then, like on the last tour of Germany, we had a couple of backup singers with the band, which was a lot of fun. And then sometimes, you know, my son's a percussionist and keyboard player, guitar player. We might augment the band. He might come out and join us. We're at that point now where it's kind of like, you know, a little bit kind of a traveling circus thing. I mean, I've done tours where we've gone out with a fiddle player, an accordion player, and done like a little acoustic thing, which is a lot of fun, you know. And as musicians, that keeps you on your toes. And because of the catalog of music that's so wide and varied and deep, you know, you can take a song out and give it a different treatment like that, you know, and that keeps the whole thing fresh.
You mentioned you guys hadn't released anything in a while. I think the last studio record might have been 2014's Blue Horizon. I mean, are you and Mark and the rest of the guys getting together and writing new material then? It sounds like you maybe alluded to that a little bit.
Yeah, well, actually, you know, the summer might, you know, the quote-unquote downtime might be good to do that. And I've got some ideas on the boil, and I know he does, and it'd be really interesting to get together with Mark and actually write as two guitar players. You know, our drummer, Joe, he's another guy who's very busy on the internet. He does online lessons, and he's always playing, you know. So and for a drummer, that's almost more important than anyone else in the band. It's a very physical instrument, so he's always doing that. But, yeah, I think the summer could be good to do that. I'm not in any rush to do that because I feel that the Blue Horizon album, it's got long legs. I mean, some people, they go, oh, what? You have a new album? Oh, I didn't know. And, you know, so we're still working some of the material from that album on stage. But you're right. I mean, all things considered, we've been diverted with the production of this massive deluxe box set, which has taken 3 years, actually. And so that's part of the reason, no excuses, but the reason that we haven't felt the need to do new music in the last few years. But I still think of Blue Horizon as a fresh new album, but it's time to start looking, and I think the summer will be when we delve into some ideas.
That sounds great. Well, you mentioned the box set. I mean, it's called Wishbone Ash, the Vintage Years. It comes out in April of 2018, this year, via Madfish Records. This is a expansive 30 CD box set, 16 studio albums covered in the space between 70 and 91, but there's also a lot of great live gems in there, which I would imagine would be a must-have for a lot of fans that haven't been able to get their hands on some of these performances. Maybe I think this is the first time maybe a lot of this stuff is being offered.
It is, yeah. It's pretty well. The whole thing about our catalog is it's been poorly served by the labels that we were with back in the day, Atlantic and Universal. Used to be Decca, but so basically, Madfish, which is a branch of Snapper Music in the UK, they have proven themselves to be absolute experts in the field of doing these box sets for bands like Pretty Things, Family. These much-loved bands that, they've won awards. Their skill is being able to work with these mega labels who actually half the time don't know how to do this stuff. And they're almost like a consultancy firm. They go in there and they go, look, they pull the licensing together, which in itself is a task. It's very difficult. They pull the original members out there, hidey holes, and they go, look, we want you to get involved with this. We want you to rate your vaults. We want you to, and they're very, very good at galvanizing and pulling a team together. And it's been a 3.5-year slog, and the thing will be for aficionados. There's a limited run, 2,500. That's it. When it's done, it's done. And it has a specific shelf life, and they're not cheap. These things are several $100s, and you've really got to want to be a fan, and you want to have a memento of a band like us. And, the thing consists of the material that you mentioned. Back in the day, there weren't that many live recordings of rock bands. If you think about the 70s, we were one of the few bands that, we were acclaimed for the Live Dates album. And at that time, I think there were maybe half a dozen rock bands that actually had produced serious live albums, like The Who, Live at Leeds, there was Live at the Fillmore, Allman Brothers, and so Live Dates was really one up there. It was up there with some of those bands, and it was recorded beautifully. And so there's a goodly number of outtakes and things around from that era, recorded on the Rolling Stones mobile truck. And so, the real diehard fans are going to find a lot of really interesting versions and different alternate takes of things, and and then all of the studio albums are being remastered, so you'll be able to hear those with fresh ears, brought up to today's standards, and then in addition to that, of course, a 150-page coffee table book and memorabilia, signed stuff, unusual, like if you're a fan of this band and you were there and you came to concerts wherever it might have been on the planet, and you remember that the era and the way that we were such a people's band at the time, you want to preserve some of those memories. This is the thing for you. It's not for a casual observer, but this is the kind of thing that I might myself buy of a band other than myself that I was a fan of. Although I'm going to find this thing interesting to see it in the flesh. They just actually got their hands on the first copies this week, and
nice.
I got a call yesterday, and the guys at the label were like, because they're always like full of trepidation, because it's such a massive undertaking, and you're going to get some glitches in there. You might have to send something back for a reprint here and there, but they said that it's looking really good, so they're delving through the whole thing right now, and it's pretty exciting actually.
Well, yeah, like if you yourself take a step back and just objectively look at this, what's the most what aspect of this box set are you yourself most looking forward to delving into?
Well, it's the physicality to the thing, actually getting your hands on it, looking through the book of, photographic stuff, material, the aspect of, the whole book is just one giant interview with all of the original members, and seeing the thing in the flesh, feeling it, touching it. It's a very tactile thing, a box set. You're pulling things out. It's beautifully presented. It's like you're opening beautifully crafted thing. That aspect's very cool. And then actually sort of like with my own ears listening to these remastered albums and putting it on my very expensive system at home, or I've got about 3 different systems, and then going through and checking out, how this thing actually is in the flesh and these live recording sound, all of that, all of the above. It's going to be like a procedure to go through it all and become accustomed to it. Yeah, I'm excited, just like a fan would be.
Well, now, on top of this box set, there's also deluxe reissues of 2 records that you guys recorded in the 80s. One, of course, is the more progressive Twin Barrels Burning, released in 1982, and then you've got the sort of more heavier, weightier sound of Raw to the Bone, which was released, if my notes here are correct, in around 1985. That's also exciting, eh?
Well, yeah, it's good because those are 2 almost forgotten albums that the 80s was a weird period for bands like us because guitar bands were trying to figure out where, we were a big, ponderous stadium rock band. It's what we became in the late 70s. And then in the 80s, we were looking for a direction. So they're like offshoot albums, like the way I see them. And they're good they're great albums. I mean, the recording, the energy on there. I mean, Twin Barrels Burning was recorded at Jimmy Page's studio in London, in England, Bookham, and top. I mean, Nigel Gray, these people, our producer, guy that produced Police. I mean, they're great records, but it's us searching for a new direction. And of course, in Britain at the time, it was the new wave of heavy metal, British heavy metal, and they would put us on at that time. They were like, well, where's a band like that? We would go on bills with Metallica, which was really odd for a band like Wishbone Ash. So there's that kind of anomaly factor about those 2 albums, and so they are like they're like a little time capsule of that moment in time when we were kind of fishing around before we actually came back to what I consider the true direction of the band, and we kind of ran with what we were good at. Yeah. And so that's why, like, you listen to an album like New Horizon or the previous album Elegant Stealth, they're more in the traditional vein of the twin lead guitar band, a little bit more pastoral, the folk rock roots there, the blues. They're definitely more bluesy than those 2 albums, but nonetheless, hard-hitting albums for any fan, very into. Of course, they've got all kinds of bonus tracks on there, outtake stuff that just didn't make the record. Yeah, nice product.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, despite the space in between the releases, Twin Barrels Burning and Raw to the Bone are one right after the other, and they almost sound like 2 different bands.
Well, that was essentially the period of time. There were the 3 mid-70s members, myself, Laurie Wisefield, and Steve Upton. So core unit there, but we changed bass players. So Trevor Bolder, who used to play with Bowie and Spiders of Mars, and then Uriah Heep, he was on Twin Barrels Burning, and it gives it a real gritty rock vibe, and Laurie and myself are sharing vocals on that album. And then you've got, like, Raw to the Bone, which is, we had a gentleman by the name of Mervyn, a phenomenal rock singer with an incredible voice. So, a lot of the songs were crafted around his vocal pipes and his abilities. And so much more hard-hitting record. But, quite a departure for us because, back in the day, our style was defined vocally, was defined by the harmonized vocals, almost a West Coast approach to singing and a softer kind of approach. So this was like hard-hitting, not quite heavy metal, but a hard rock album. Yeah. And, like I say, Mervyn was with us for a bunch of tours on that one album. So it's really showcasing that period of time when we were in that phase. And it's intriguing. I listen back to it now. I'm like, wow, did we really do that? That's incredible, actually.
Just upon listening to the record myself, I couldn't help but noting that there's a bit of a vocal similarity between Mervyn and maybe some great Canadian vocalists like Geddy Lee or maybe even Miles Goodwin of April Wine fame.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's got that insanely high voice. His big hero was Glenn Hughes.
Oh, yes.
In fact, he came from the band Trapeze. He stepped into Trapeze after Glenn left Trapeze.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
And, he's big hero. And Glenn's just somebody. He's a monster, and we all love him. He's having a resurgence at the moment with Joe Bonamassa. And, so that's the lineage there. And that's why that's how you can hear those influences on Raw to the Bone. So if you're a fan of Glenn and you like those kind of vocalists, then Mervyn and Raw to the Bone, that's something that you'd love.
Right on. Well, I did mention off the top now that the band in 2019 will be coming up on the 50th. Do you guys have anything special planned? Just for such a monumental amount of time?
Well, we're kind of getting aware of it. People are telling us at every stop, hey, you're coming up for 50. I mean, I'm the one guy who's been with the project for close on 50 years. But we're actually we start our 49th year actually in the fall of this year. So we're going to focus on celebrating the 49th. We're labeling it XLIX, which is 49 in Roman numerals, and that'll be the motif that we go with for T-shirts and in general labeling of the 49th year. So everything is going to start building up. We'll obviously have a special concert in London, which is where we form the band, and we'll obviously come up with an idea as to how we're going to kind of celebrate the 50th.
Sure.
So it's a very special time, and for any band or entity that's been around for 50 years, it's unfathomable, really. There's very few rock bands that can celebrate that. So
no kidding. What's your secret to just your long run in the industry, Andy?
Well, I'm a very adaptable person. I mean, I'm can roll with the punches a lot. I'm a pragmatist, and I'm also I really try and keep the humility in the whole thing, and I really, really work with the fan community. That's my interest. Like in '94, when the internet really started to go in, I mean, we understood that everything was gonna change. The record labels would implode.
Yeah.
That social media would take over. So we worked that right from the get-go, and I realized that this is a life that I really loved. I wasn't gonna fight it. You go through these phases where the label will say to you, oh, we need a hit single, or you need to do this, or you need to do that. And I realized that, it was probably in the 90s that I really started you just got to trust your instincts. And this is the life that I love and I lead. So if I feel good about what we're doing and it's getting me off, I know the fans are going to dig it. So I do what a lot of bands now do, actually, as a matter of a career choice. I just started to trust my instincts a lot more, and then I started to, stop listening to people that say, "Oh, I think you should do this or you should do that," and then that's the way that's what I put it down to. And I think that if you're having a great time out there and you are enjoying your fan community, and you're not fighting it or you're not trying to be something you're not, that's when you start to get really successful. So I have a lot of pride in the terms of the way that we've got this community that backs us up and follows us and supports us. But that's all come through a lot of hard work and graft and just keeping your eyes open. I mean, I did a book 2 years ago. I wrote my biography.
Yeah, that's right.
And I called it Eyes Wide Open. And, there was no mistake. Really, there was a reason for that, was because if you want to have longevity and you've got to have some intelligence about it. You've got to keep your eyes open. You've got to realize, you've got to see trends that are happening and how you can adapt to them. Mm-hmm. And there's been some massive events in the music game, as I mentioned just a minute ago. The implosion of the record labels, the fact that they don't build artists anymore. A lot of artists have a short shelf life now. They come, they go. And I think that if you can see all that stuff and react to it and figure out how you're going to adapt to it, that's part of the reason that we have this longevity, because we've figured all that stuff out. And, of course, the other major component is everything comes back to just being on the road and being accessible
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're a live act. We've always been known as a live act. We gig. That's what we do. If you want to come and see what we do, it's at a gig. And I think people trust that. They learn to trust that. They go, you know, they know you're not. They know you're delivering the goods, and that's really the thing that you always fall back on. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, we're a guitar band. We like to flex the guitar muscle. We like to get out there and play. And we just love it. I love the life. I love the life. That's it.
Well, with that being said, of course, you're about to kick off some European dates in March, and then you're off to the good old US of A in April, and then up to Canada in the fall. So you know, always keeping busy, and of course, Wishbone Ash, the Vintage Years box set coming out April 2018 via Madfish Records, and then you've also got the reissues of Twin Barrels Burning and Rot of the Bone. All solid stuff, because Andy, you are a solid guy, but I don't think you know, I need to tell you that. I think the people already know.
Well, it's very nice of you to say. I hope at this point in my life I'm solid. You know, I wouldn't want to be anything else. So
Yeah.
I'm really happy at this point in time where we're at, and yeah, I'm very grateful to the fans. There's so much stuff coming out of interest for the fans of the band at the moment. I'm in a good space. I'm in a good space, Jack. Yeah.
Right on. Well, thanks for coming on Do You Know Jack today, Andy, and we wish yourself and Wishbone Ash all the best, man. Good luck and Godspeed, sir.
Thank you very much, and yeah, we'll travel safe, and everyone that comes to see us, travel safe, and we'll see you down the road a piece.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Have a good one.
Thank you, man. Bye-bye.